First contact. The Deep Space Monitoring Station sat quietly in the Nevada desert. Inside, technicians worked their regular night shift, watching screens filled with stars and data. Nothing unusual ever happened here. Until tonight. John Miller stared at his screen, confused by what he was seeing. The energy readings from the outer solar system were unlike anything in their records. He blinked, checked the equipment, and called over his supervisor. "Dr. Foster, you should see this," John said, pointing to the unusual pattern on his monitor. Dr. Alan Foster, the station's chief scientist, leaned forward, his eyes widening. "That's not natural," he whispered. He quickly typed commands, enhancing the signal. "Those are artificial energy signatures, massive ones." Within the hour, the room filled with scientists and government officials. The data confirmed what seemed impossible. A fleet of vessels had entered the edge of our solar system. They were damaged based on the irregular energy patterns, and there were many of them. "We need to establish contact," Dr. Foster said, his voice steady despite the historic nature of the moment. "Someone get Olivia Martinez from communications. Now." Olivia arrived, her hair still messy from being woken up at 3 a.m. She was the best communications specialist NASA had, known for breaking impossible codes and patterns. "We're picking up something that might be a transmission," Dr. Foster explained. "But it's like nothing we've ever seen." Olivia nodded, sitting down at the communication station. For hours, she worked with the signal, finding patterns, testing responses. The room grew tense as morning came and went. Finally, near sunset, she smiled. "I've got it," she said. "It's a mathematical language based on quantum states, and it's definitely a distress call." Over the next 2 days, communications improved. The aliens called themselves the Nayari. Their fleet consisted of 32 ships carrying about 50,000 refugees. They had fled their home system when their star began to die, but damaged propulsion systems had left them stranded near Pluto's orbit. Their life support is failing, Olivia explained to the emergency United Nations session, broadcast globally. They have maybe 3 months before systems completely fail. They're asking for help. The world reacted with a mixture of fear, wonder, and compassion. News channels showed the first grainy images of the alien ships, massive structures with graceful, curved designs unlike human vessels. Captain William Carter of the International Space Station Horizon received emergency orders to prepare for first contact. His station was the furthest human outpost and would serve as the initial meeting point. "This is unprecedented," Carter told his crew. "We're about to make history, and these beings are counting on us for survival." Scientists worked around the clock to understand Nayari biology and technology. They learned the aliens were somewhat humanoid but adapted for higher gravity, with denser bodies and multiple hearts. Their technology was advanced beyond Earth's in some areas, but surprisingly similar in basic principles. "They're not that different from us," Dr. Foster explained in a press conference. "They build, they explore, they have families. And right now, they need our help." Space agencies around the world began planning a response. Engineers evaluated how Earth's ships might assist the stranded fleet. Medical teams prepared for possible biological incompatibilities. 7 days after first detection, Captain Carter's team established video communication with the Nayari leadership. The alien that appeared on screen had blue-gray skin, large eyes, and spoke through a translator device. "We thank humanity for responding to our call," the Nayari leader said. "We did not know if we would find friends in this system. Our children will remember your kindness." Carter nodded solemnly. "We're preparing help now. You're not alone anymore." As the transmission ended, everyone in the control room knew that humanity faced its greatest challenge, and perhaps its greatest opportunity. 50,000 lives depended on what they would do next. Decision point. The United Nations Security Council chamber was packed beyond capacity. World leaders and top officials gathered to decide humanity's response to the stranded aliens. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "We cannot rush into this," said the French representative. "We know nothing about these Nayari. This could be a trap." "They have children on those ships," countered the Nigerian ambassador. 50,000 souls who will die without our help. How can we turn away?" For 3 days, the debate raged. Military experts warned of security risks. Scientists argued for the incredible opportunity. Economists calculated the costs of a rescue mission versus potential technological gains. Meanwhile, engineer Samantha Reeves worked frantically at NASA headquarters. She hadn't slept in 48 hours, fueled by coffee and the weight of history on her shoulders. Her team had been analyzing the Nayari ship's specifications, transmitted as part of their distress call. "It could work," she muttered, reviewing her calculations again. "It has to work." When called to present to the Security Council, Samantha stood straight despite her exhaustion. "We can help them," she said simply. "By repurposing our Mars colony ships and International Space Station modules, we can create a rescue fleet capable of reaching the Nayari and stabilizing their life support systems." She displayed holographic models showing how Earth vessels could dock with the alien ships. "The technology is compatible enough. We would need to build some new components, but nothing beyond our capabilities." In orbit, Lieutenant Daniel Garcia had been coordinating with Nayari representatives via video link. As part of the advance team on the ISS Horizon, he was among the first humans to interact regularly with the aliens. "They're sharing medical information freely," he reported to the Council via video link. "Their understanding of cellular repair and radiation protection is centuries ahead of ours. They've offered this knowledge regardless of our decision to help." The Council members exchanged glances. Such technology could revolutionize cancer treatment on Earth. After his testimony, Daniel returned to his communication station. A young Nayari named Vela was waiting to continue their cultural exchange. "Do your people still debate our fate?" she asked, her translator converting her musical language to English. "Yes," Daniel admitted. "Some are afraid." "We understand fear," Vela replied. "We feared the darkness of space for years before necessity drove us to it." Back on Earth, protesters gathered outside the UN. Some carried signs welcoming the aliens, others warning of invasion. Religious leaders issued statements ranging from embracing our cosmic brothers and sisters to declarations of demonic influences. Inside the council chamber, the Secretary General called for a final vote on what had been named Operation Lighthouse. "We face a defining moment for our species," she said. "What we decide today will be remembered for generations." The vote passed by a narrow margin. Earth would attempt the largest rescue mission in human history. Captain Elaine Washington received her orders while commanding a lunar mining protection detail. As one of the most experienced space commanders, she was selected to lead the mission aboard Earth's most advanced ship, the HFY Pathfinder. "I need the best," she told Mission Control, reviewing personnel files. "Scientists, engineers, diplomats. People who can think on their feet when everything goes wrong." As crews across Earth prepared the rescue fleet, Samantha Reeves joined Captain Washington on the Pathfinder. "Do you think we can really pull this off?" Samantha asked as they watched workers loading equipment. Washington studied the younger woman's face. "I think we have to try. And I think that attempting this, whether we succeed or fail, makes us better than we were yesterday." 3 weeks after first contact, the rescue fleet prepared for launch, carrying the hopes of 2 species among the stars. The journey begins. The HFY Pathfinder led the human fleet toward the edge of the solar system. 5 ships followed behind, each carrying specialists, supplies, and equipment. The ships used the latest ion propulsion engines, but even so, the journey would take nearly a month. Captain Elaine Washington stood on the bridge, watching the Earth shrink in the viewing screen. "How's our course looking, Lieutenant?" she asked her navigation officer. "Perfect, Captain. We'll reach the Nayari fleet in 26 days if all goes as planned." In the science lab, physicist Nathan Patel scratched his head as he studied the Nayari propulsion schematics for the 10th time. Something about the aliens' drive system didn't make sense. It seemed to bend some fundamental laws of physics. "Anything yet, Dr. Patel?" Samantha Reeves asked as she entered the lab. "Their technology is unusual," Nathan replied. "They're using quantum fields in ways I've never considered possible. If we can understand this, it could revolutionize space travel." As the days passed, the crew settled into a routine. They trained for first contact, studied Nayari biology, and prepared repair plans for the damaged alien ships. But nothing could truly prepare them for the real thing. "Nayari fleet in visual range," announced the sensor officer on day 25. Everyone rushed to viewing stations. The alien ships were enormous, far larger than they had appeared in transmitted images. Each vessel was shaped like a giant teardrop with glowing blue lines running along its surface. Some had visible damage. Dark patches where hull breaches had been sealed and sections where the glow had died entirely. "They're beautiful," whispered Samantha. Captain Washington opened the communication channel. "Nayari Fleet, this is Captain Elaine Washington of the Earth Alliance ship Pathfinder. We've come to help." After a moment, a response came. "Earth vessels, this is Ambassador Zeth Loren. Words cannot express our gratitude for your journey." The human ships closed in carefully and docked with the Nayari flagship. A delegation including Captain Washington, Dr. Patel, and cultural specialist Kevin Wright prepared to board. The airlock cycled, and for the first time, humans stood face to face with the Nayari. Ambassador Zeth Loren was taller than expected, nearly 7 feet, with smooth gray-blue skin and large, expressive eyes. 4 arms extended from his torso, and he wore a simple white garment with glowing symbols. "Welcome," he said through a translation device at his throat. "You honor us with your presence." Kevin Wright stepped forward, making the greeting gesture they had learned from the video communications. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We come as friends and helpers." The Nayari delegation led them through corridors filled with technology unlike anything humans had built. The ship was clearly designed for a long journey, with hydroponic gardens and large community spaces where Nayari children watched the humans with curious eyes. "Our star began to destabilize 30 years ago," Zeth Loren explained as they walked. "We had warning, but not enough time to perfect our long-range vessels. We loaded as many as we could save and left our homeworld behind." Captain Washington nodded solemnly. "You've been traveling all this time." "Yes, our ships were meant to reach a specific star system we had studied, but a radiation storm damaged our main propulsion systems. We have drifted, making repairs where possible, for the last 5 years." Meanwhile, other human teams had begun distributing emergency supplies to the fleet. Engineers discovered that the technological differences were greater than expected. Earth tools often didn't work with Nayari systems, and power connections were incompatible. "This is going to be harder than we thought," Samantha told Dr. Patil after their first inspection. "Their technology is advanced, but it operates on completely different principles." As the first day of contact ended, Captain Washington gathered her team. "We have 50,000 lives depending on us finding solutions. Whatever challenges we face, remember what's at stake." The human rescue mission had begun in earnest, but the greatest challenges still lay ahead. Crisis point. The alarm blared through the human and Nayari ships, its urgent wail cutting through the steady hum of machinery. Emergency lights flashed red, casting strange shadows across worried faces. "Life support failure on vessels 7, 12, and 15, reported the Nayari communications officer, her translator unable to hide the panic in her voice. Captain Washington turned to her crew. "How many people on those ships?" "Nearly 6,000, replied Kevin Wright, checking his datapad. "We need to evacuate them immediately," Washington ordered. "All available shuttles and transport vessels, prepare for emergency rescue operations." The situation had deteriorated faster than anyone expected. After 2 weeks of working with the Nayari fleet, the human teams had made progress, but 3 of the most damaged ships had finally reached critical failure. Engineer Ryan Jackson, had been working on Vessel 12 when the systems failed. He felt the air growing thin as he helped Nayari families toward the escape pods. "This way," he shouted, guiding a group of children. Their skin had taken on a pale blue color, a sign of oxygen deprivation in Nayari physiology. A section of ceiling collapsed behind them, blocking their path back. Ryan checked his oxygen meter. 15 minutes remained in his personal tank. There were 30 Nayari with him, and the nearest evacuation point was 10 minutes away. "Share my oxygen," he said, removing his mask and offering it to a struggling elder Nayari. The alien's eyes widened in surprise, but Ryan just nodded and continued leading them forward. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out as human rescue teams risked their lives to save the aliens. The Earth ships couldn't possibly hold all the refugees, but they worked to stabilize the remaining Nayari vessels. In the engineering bay of the Pathfinder, Ryan Jackson recovered from his rescue mission, breathing from an oxygen tank, while Dr. Lisa Cooper checked his vitals. "That was stupid and brave," she told him with a small smile. "Just doing what needed doing," he replied weakly. Then his eyes widened as he sat up suddenly. "I think I have an idea." Despite Dr. Cooper's protests, Ryan returned to work immediately. He gathered a team of human and Nayari engineers to develop a power transfer system that could redirect energy from the stronger vessels to the weaker ones. "If we create a network," he explained, drawing diagrams, "we can keep the remaining ships stable until permanent repairs are made." The Nayari engineers were skeptical at first, but soon recognized the potential in Ryan's simple but effective approach. Meanwhile, Dr. Cooper had her own crisis to manage. Hundreds of Nayari refugees were showing signs of radiation sickness from exposure during earlier damage to their fleet. Working with Nayari healers, she struggled to adapt their advanced medical technology to treat the growing number of patients. "Their cellular repair techniques are amazing," she told Captain Washington during a brief break. "But we're running out of the materials they need for their treatments." As they worked to solve these problems, the fleet's sensors detected a new threat, a massive solar flare heading directly toward them from a nearby star. "The flare will hit us in 6 hours, reported the science officer. "The Earth ships have adequate shielding, but the weakened Nayari vessels won't survive the radiation." Captain Washington studied the tactical display, calculating distances and shield strengths. She made her decision quickly. "Position our ships to block the flare's path to the Nayari vessels," she ordered. "We'll use our shields to protect them." "Captain," her first officer objected, "that will expose our ships to dangerous radiation levels. We could lose systems, maybe even people." "I'm aware of the risks," Washington replied firmly. "But we didn't come all this way to watch them die now." As the flare approached, the Earth vessels moved into defensive positions, creating a protective barrier between the deadly radiation and the vulnerable Nayari ships. Ambassador Zethlerin watched from his vessel as the humans deliberately put themselves in harm's way. "Why would they risk themselves for us?" he asked quietly. A Nayari elder standing nearby answered simply, "Because that is what makes them human." Breakthrough. Dr. Nathan Patel hadn't slept in 3 days. His lab on the Pathfinder was covered in diagrams, holographic projections, and discarded coffee cups. The Nayari scientist Tivmore worked beside him, her 4 hands moving gracefully across multiple control panels. "Try reversing the quantum field polarity," Nathan suggested, rubbing his tired eyes. Tivmore adjusted the settings on their experimental propulsion module. The small device hummed, glowed bright blue, then stabilized. "It's working," Nathan exclaimed, checking the readings. "We've created a stable hybrid drive." The breakthrough came after weeks of collaboration. By combining human understanding of conventional physics with Nayari quantum field manipulation, they had created something entirely new. A propulsion system that could be built with Earth materials but incorporated the advanced principles of Nayari technology. "This could save the fleet," Tivmore said, her translator carrying the emotion in her voice. In the main hangar bay, Ryan Jackson's engineering team had already begun retrofitting the alien ships with Earth-compatible components. Human and Nayari workers moved together efficiently, their initial awkwardness replaced by practiced coordination. Route the power coupling through this adapter, Ryan instructed, pointing to a junction where human and alien technology met. It should provide enough stability to run their life support at full capacity. The radiation damage from the solar flare had been significant but manageable. Captain Washington's gamble had worked. The Earth ships had absorbed the worst of the radiation, protecting the weaker Nayari vessels. Repairs were ongoing, but the immediate crisis had passed. In her quarters, communications specialist Olivia Martinez made an unexpected discovery while working with the Nayari databases. These aren't just technical manuals, she realized as she studied the alien data. They're cultural archives. Olivia had found vast collections of Nayari art, music, literature, and history. The aliens had preserved their entire civilization's knowledge, knowing they might never return to their homeworld. She listened to Nayari music, complex harmonies unlike anything on Earth. She viewed images of their cities, beautiful structures that seemed to flow with the natural landscape rather than dominate it. The more she learned, the more she understood that these weren't just refugees. They were the carriers of an ancient and peaceful civilization. Relationships between the humans and Nayari grew stronger each day. Lieutenant Daniel Garcia, who had first communicated with the aliens from orbit, now led a dangerous repair mission to the most damaged Nayari vessel. Pressure dropping in Section 4 warned his Nayari teammate as they worked to seal a breach in the hull. "Almost got it," Daniel replied, his hand steady despite the risk. The repair material finally adhered to the damaged section, and the warning alarms silenced. His Nayari companion placed a four-fingered hand on Daniel's shoulder in a gesture they had learned meant gratitude and respect. Back on the flagship, Dr. Patel and Tiv Moore presented their propulsion breakthrough to Captain Washington and Ambassador Zethloren. "We can begin retrofitting the fleet immediately," Nathan explained. "With these drives, the Nayari ships can make it to Earth safely." "This is more than we hoped for," Ambassador Zethloren said. "You have not only saved us, but given us a future." The test of their theory came the next day. The first retrofitted Nayari ship powered up its new hybrid drive. The entire fleet watched as the vessel moved smoothly, its engines glowing with a bright, stable light. A cheer erupted across communication channels, shared by humans and Nayari alike. Captain Washington stood with Ambassador Zethloren on the observation deck, watching the successful test. "Your people have proven themselves to be exceptional allies," Zethloren said formally. "I propose we formalize our relationship with an alliance between our peoples." Washington nodded, knowing this moment would change human history forever. "I think that's an excellent idea, Ambassador." As they clasped hands, human and alien, the path forward became clear. Together, they would complete the retrofitting of the fleet and then begin the journey back to Earth. The return journey. The combined fleet of human and Nayari vessels began their journey toward Earth. The retrofitted alien ships moved smoothly on their new hybrid engines, their once fading lights now burning bright. From the bridge of the Pathfinder, Captain Washington watched the armada with pride. "Course is steady, Captain," her navigation officer reported. "Estimated arrival at Earth orbit in 42 days. While the ships traveled, work continued. Some Nayari vessels still needed repairs, and more importantly, plans needed to be made for what would happen when they reached Earth. Heather Wilson had joined the mission as a political specialist. Now she found herself negotiating the most important diplomatic agreement in human history. She sat across from Ambassador Zethloren in the Pathfinder's conference room, surrounded by advisors from both species. "The United Nations Security Council has approved temporary settlement rights," Heather explained. "But many nations are competing to host your people." "Competing?" Zethloren seemed confused by the concept. "Your technology is valuable," Heather said carefully. "Many governments and corporations see advantages in being the first to access it." The ambassador's large eyes narrowed slightly. "We come seeking sanctuary. not to create conflict. I understand, Heather replied. That's why we need a fair agreement that protects your people and prevents exploitation. Messages from Earth arrived daily as the fleet approached. News channels broadcast continuous updates about the approaching aliens. Religious groups offered interpretations of what the Nayari arrival meant. Scientists published papers speculating about alien biology and technology. Not all reactions were positive. A growing movement called Earth First staged protests against allowing unknown aliens to settle on the planet. Their messages became increasingly hostile as the fleet drew closer. In his quarters, Dr. Alan Foster, who had first identified the alien energy signatures, studied data about the Nayari biology and habitat needs. The ambassador had shared information about their original world, a planet with large oceans and numerous islands. They're semi-aquatic, he explained to Captain Washington. They need access to both land and deep water. After analyzing potential locations, he identified a region in the Pacific Ocean that might work perfectly for Nayari settlement. The area had a cluster of uninhabited islands and deep protected waters. It would require minimal terraforming, he said, showing the captain his findings. And it's far enough from major population centers to provide privacy while they adjust. As Earth grew larger in their view screens, the human crew members faced difficult choices. Some had formed close bonds with the Nayari. Others had discovered fascinating aspects of alien science they wanted to continue studying. Would you consider staying with us? Tivmore asked Nathan Patul as they worked on further refinements to the hybrid drive. Nathan glanced up in surprise. Stay with the Nayari. We will need scientists who understand both our technologies, she explained. You would be honored among our people. Similar conversations happened throughout the fleet as humans and aliens considered a future neither had imagined before their meeting. The relative peace was shattered 3 weeks into their journey when security alarms blared across the Pathfinder. Unauthorized access to engine control systems, reported the security officer. Someone's trying to disable our drive. Captain Washington ordered an immediate lockdown. Security teams from both species searched the ships, eventually finding a hidden sabotage device near the main engine controls. It was designed to overload our systems, Ryan Jackson explained after examining the device. It would have disabled us and possibly damaged nearby Nayari ships. Investigation revealed that a small group of crew members had secretly opposed the mission. They believed bringing aliens to Earth was too dangerous. Nayari security officers had detected the plot and alerted their human counterparts before the sabotage could succeed. Even among your own people, you faced division because of us, Ambassador Zethlerin said sadly when informed of the incident. Captain Washington shook her head firmly. Every great change faces resistance, but look around you, Ambassador. For every person who fears this future, dozens more are working to build it. As Earth grew from a distant point of light to a blue marble filling their screens, both species prepared for the challenges of arrival. Despite the uncertainty ahead, the successful journey had proven that humans and Nayari could overcome enormous obstacles together. New beginnings. Earth orbit bustled with activity as the combined fleet arrived. Space stations and satellites adjusted their positions to make room for the massive Nayari vessels. News cameras captured everything, broadcasting the historic moment to billions of people below. We're receiving transmission from Earth Defense Command, the communications officer announced. Captain Washington nodded. Put them through. A stern military commander appeared on screen. Captain Washington, your fleet is to maintain position until security protocols are completed. Ambassador Zethlerin stood beside Washington, watching quietly as humans debated among themselves. Military vessels surrounded the fleet, some welcoming, others clearly positioned as a precaution. Seems we've stirred up quite a reaction, Washington said quietly to the ambassador. Change is never easy, Zethlerin replied. It was the same when our ancestors first united our world's nations. After 3 days of negotiations, clearance finally came. The first shuttle carrying Nayari visitors was approved to land at a specially prepared facility in New Zealand. Captain Washington and Ambassador Zethleran would lead the delegation. As the shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, Zethleran pressed his hand against the viewport, watching clouds part to reveal blue oceans and green landmasses. "It reminds me of home," he said softly. The landing site was surrounded by security, diplomats, and media. When the shuttle doors opened, cameras flashed, and people fell silent. Captain Washington emerged first, followed by the ambassador and 4 Nayari children. The children had been chosen symbolically, orphans who had lost their parents during the long journey. They stepped onto Earth's soil with wide, wondering eyes, their blue-gray skin shimmering in the sunlight. One small Nayari girl stopped, bent down, and touched the grass with all 4 hands. She looked up with an expression of pure joy that needed no translation. The image was captured by dozens of cameras and became instantly famous worldwide, the picture that humanized the aliens for many who had feared them. A week later, Ambassador Zethleran addressed the United Nations General Assembly. The session was broadcast globally, with record-breaking viewership. "People of Earth," the ambassador began, his translator conveying his words in multiple languages simultaneously. "We come not as conquerors or beggars, but as neighbors seeking to build alongside you. As thanks for saving our people, we offer knowledge that may help heal your world and your bodies." He explained that Nayari medical technology could help treat radiation damage and certain forms of cancer. Their environmental engineering could assist with cleaning polluted oceans, something particularly important to the water-loving aliens. While politicians debated, work began on establishing Unaya, the first Nayari settlement on Earth. The location Dr. Foster had identified in the Pacific proved ideal. Construction ships began creating floating structures designed to serve as transition homes, while more permanent dwellings were built. Captain Washington received the highest honors from multiple nations for her leadership during the mission. During one ceremony, a reporter asked if she ever had doubts about the mission's success. "Every day," she answered honestly. "But doubt doesn't mean you stop trying. It just means you plan more carefully." Ryan Jackson and Tiv Moore continued their engineering partnership, establishing the first joint human-Nayari technical institute. Students from both species enrolled to study the new hybrid technologies being developed. The propulsion system was just the beginning, Ryan explained to a group of eager young engineers. "When we combine our different ways of thinking, we solve problems neither of us could tackle alone." 6 months after the Nayari arrival, the United Nations Space Agency announced a historic initiative, the first joint human-Nayari deep space exploration mission. The ship would venture beyond our solar system, powered by the hybrid technology that had saved the refugee fleet. As the ship prepared for launch, Engineer Jackson and scientist Tivmore stood on the observation deck. The vessel gleamed below them, its design clearly showing elements from both cultures. "Did you ever imagine this would be the result when you first detected our distress signal?" Tivmore asked. Ryan shook his head. "Never. I just wanted to help people who needed it." "That simple desire changed the course of 2 civilizations," she replied. The new ship's engines flared to life, a bright blue glow that symbolized the beginning of a shared future. As it accelerated away from Earth, carrying crew members from both species, it left behind a world forever changed by the day humans chose to rescue a stranded alien fleet.